a part of the first volunteer cohort of humanitarian designers. Just a little bit about humanitarian designers. It started in 2021, January. It's a grassroots NGO. And basically, we have three missions, which you can think of as building bridges. One is to raise awareness in the humanitarian sector about the added value of designers. Another is to communicate to designers about the humanitarian sector. And also, we want to support our community members who would like to develop their career as a committed designer in the humanitarian sector. And we also have some activities that are part of these missions. One is education, where we teach and learn about humanitarian design. Then we have also communication, which is around developing the narrative of this field because it's quite unique, and also just the development of our NGO. And say that again, Gwen, please feel free to add more. They are our co founders alongside Irena. And diving straight into Norwegian Refugee Council, it is a great pleasure to have Roderick Besseling and Irena Lämmerer from Norwegian Refugee Council. Thank you so much for joining us today. We're very grateful to have your presence. A little bit about the organization. It is an independent humanitarian organization which helps people who've been forced to flee. They protect displaced people and support them as they build a new future. And they also started relief efforts after World War II. Today, NRC works in both new and protracted crises across 40 countries and specializes in six areas: food security, education, shelter, legal assistance, protection from violence, and water and sanitation and hygiene. We have from NRC today Irena Lämmerer, who's a front end developer at NRC with over a decade of experience bridging design, technology, and purpose. Before joining NRC, she worked as a network engineer with DLR Project Träger and KLab EduMedia, developing research and education platforms that balance usability with complexity. And her earlier roles have been at SAP Innovation Center, Freie Universität Berlin, and in graphic design. And e-commerce reflect a career rooted in both technical craft and creative problem solving. Irena brings a thoughtful approach to building digital tools that empower people and make information more accessible. That's Irena. And on Roderick, he leads the data analytics at the Norwegian Refugee Council, where he guides the organization's digital transformation, data governance, and analytics strategy. With a background spanning digital strategy, open data, and humanitarian innovation, he has helped shape NRC's approach to evidence based decision making and responsible data use. Before taking on his current role, he served as senior advisor for open data and product manager for transparency and open data, advancing initiatives that strengthen accountability and organizational insight. His career blends leadership, design thinking, and a deep commitment to using data as a force for better humanitarian outcomes. I would now like to invite both of you to share your paths and journeys to NRC and what you currently do there. How did you both actually get started and reach the work that you do now, and what motivated to bring your technical and design skills into this space? Whoever would like to start. Just your journey and path. Yeah.
I guess I want to start. So I studied computer science, and I originally had a design path in mind. I've always been kind of keen on the topic, but I ended up in computer science. But the interest was just always there, so I ended up in front-end development, which is just a nice way to combine the two. And I've always wanted to use my skills for something good or useful. So I started out with some educational web apps, delivering educational content or bringing people together in an educational context, quick
Mhm.
to the public sector. And then I was looking for something else and found the humanitarian sector. And that was quite the epitome of useful, I thought. So I joined in 2021 and I've been working on web apps here too since the beginning, different web apps. And there have also been few attempts on delivering or developing our design system, which I guess I'll get to later. Um, I'll leave it with this for now.
Great. Thanks, Irene. Yeah, for me, I guess, Medha, you did a great job already introducing my background, so I won't go and recap all of it. I also started with attempting a degree in computer science, but it's something I never actually finished. But it did give me a basis in technology and digital, which I think brought me to where my career is. But after taking a break from studying and just doing some work for a few years, I decided it was time to go back to university and then do international relations and then a master's in post-war recovery studies. So kind of going right a bit more into the humanitarian sector in terms of the academic sphere. But I guess with me, I always had this kind of background in computer science and software engineering, even though I never finished the course. So digital and data and technology kind of came naturally to me. So things like information management, data systems, data management was always something that I gravitated towards in the different organizations where I worked. The first bit of interesting work, shall I say, was my time in Ethiopia for 2 years, working at a university in their ICT department. And there it was really about making digital tools available, but then also empowering and enabling students, predominantly, but also teachers, to use those tools. So yeah, it's not just about making the tools available, but also making sure that you engage and empower the end users into using those tools. After that, a great 2 years in Ethiopia, I went back to the Netherlands and worked at an organization called United Network of Young Peace Builders, which again brought together young people across the world in peace building endeavors. And there we started using different digital platforms, similar to what I guess humanitarian designers are doing, to bring all of these young peace leaders together to share expertise about peace building and look for training opportunities among them. Then I moved to Coordate in the Netherlands, which was also a large Dutch development organization. And there I implemented data collection platforms, monitoring and evaluation platforms. So kind of stuck to that kind of how do we capture data and how do we do something with it. And after that, I took a hiatus from the NGO sector and worked for 2 donor governments. So first in the UK, I worked for Department for International Development. And then afterwards at the Netherlands Ministry of Foreign Affairs, both working on open data platforms. And I guess my responsibility was to make sure that the general public, but also NGOs and donors had access to information and data about what the different donor governments were funding, but also what the humanitarian organizations were doing. And I enabled that through the creation of 2 data platforms that I managed and ensured that they met user needs. And then in a year before Irena, I joined NRC in 2020. And there I started off as product lead and then moved to head of the data and analytics unit, where we work on different data and information products to enable better decision making across not just head office, but also the country offices where we work. So back over to you, Medha.
Right. Wow, that was just amazing. I think I'm already quite inspired because similar to both of you, I also come from a computers background. However, it's really funny that I didn't think it could be applied into humanitarian sector, as I'm discovering only recently and through maybe chatting more with both of you. So I think one question that comes to mind as I think of my background in computers and both of yours is how how does data actually translate or does not translate, or what has surprised you the most about how design and data thinking could translate into humanitarian work? Because when we think of data, I think it's very technical, and and for both of you to be working in a humanitarian space, how do you translate that data in such a space?
Irena, do you want to start us off?
Data is you.
Data's me. I think that's cheating a little bit. Again, I mean, there's different aspects of it. Of course, there's the whole data lifecycle collection process about how you structure data collection, how you analyze the data, how you manipulate the data, how you transform the data, how you visualize the data, and how you communicate the data. So having a good solid foundation about data and data management skills, I think, is essential. But also linked to that, I guess what makes data very interesting is again then looking more of it from like an analytical point of view, but also then I guess evaluating like the different products that we make. And again, maybe Irena, you could mention some of the stuff I guess you've worked on, and seeing if data helped you inform decisions about how you develop things. But I guess from my experience, mine is more on the managing the data lifecycle, ensuring that the data that we collect is suitable and fit for purpose for what we're trying to achieve. But also, again, we use data and data points as well to analyze the products and platforms that we create to ensure that they actually meet the internal or external user needs as well. So I guess that's a double answer on data. Irena?
I would more speak about web apps in general, or the process of developing a web app in the context, which I would just say has the specific challenges of you might have, like, you cannot rely on certain devices of your end users or on performance of the end device or connectivity. So that always needs to be factored in. And user research also is not as easily feasible because your users might just be the field staff, which is extremely busy and just not prioritizing design questions, or the actual participants, which are, of course, also not always easy to reach for things like user research. So those are humanitarian specific challenges, I would say.
Right. And continuing along the same line, Irena, in humanitarian work, your tools must balance usability, reliability, or as you're mentioning, constraints, maybe like low bandwidth or limited access to people. How do you design and develop for such realities?
Well, first of all, I don't design. Like, I'm just a front-end developer. I'm not a designer. I just like design. The designs have usually been done by someone else, if at all. Actually, in most applications that I've seen within NRC, that I'm not sure there were any designers involved. Usually, it's just the developer team coming up with the UX, I guess. And performance-wise, yeah, I don't know. Also, a lot of the web apps actually fail, or are like, not every web app that is trying to be delivered is in the end actually delivered. So it's kind of hard to get results, really. And
Right.
I don't really have any right now.
Right. Roderick, would you like to jump in
sure.
on that? Or
Yeah, I think, again, I think accessibility is a big challenge for us. And like you mentioned, that has both to do with connectivity, low bandwidth areas, but also language, of course. I mean, if you think about the 40 different countries that we work, it's not just 40 different languages often. It's probably about 80 different languages, depending on the context and the environment that we work in. So, I mean, that's quite a large challenge that we have to make sure that the work that we're doing, especially within digital systems, that could be translated um, to meet the needs either of the staff in country or the participants that we serve in the country as well. So that remains a large challenge, no matter what. And I think it's true what Irena said as well, and I think that's the interesting thing about humanitarian designers. There is often not much design, or design is often a bit of an afterthought when it comes to creating solutions, both at, like, let's say the head office where we both work, but also for our colleagues that work in the field. And some people make best efforts to do some design, I guess, aspects to when they do something. But there's also not a lot. There's also no design process involved. There's not often a design process involved about actually doing things like, I don't know, empathy mapping or different stakeholder analysis about how they would use it. Or I think we're getting better at things like user acceptance testing and some other stuff, and user feedback, and doing some more prototypes and wireframing to ensure that the products meet the needs of the customer or the end user. But it's still not the norm to do it in a I guess an agreed central way. So maybe if it's anything else that you can think of on that, those are my observations so far, not just from NRC but the sector as a whole.
Right, absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing about both of your works and the challenges you're facing so far and the processes you're using to handle that. Perhaps it'd be great to also learn about one project or the current different projects that both of you are working on, to dive deeper into the kind of work both of you do right now and also how you do it.
So I currently work on two projects, if you will, even though one of them is kind of like fading out because it's more or less done. Which is just a web app, again delivering educational content. It's this is kind of following me, where again the design was just kind of done by us as developers, without any actual input from developers, just like our best guess. And the second project is the design system, which is more like my pet project. I'm also the only one working on it, and it's more like 1 day a week kind of project, which of course also is approached by me from a purely developer perspective. So yeah, we're really kind of missing an actual designer's perspective. Yeah, but that design system. So like what I mean when I say I'm approaching it from a developer's perspective is like it's in React and in Storybook. Like I'm developing a Storybook page for these React components, and it is based on Material UI, and I am focusing more on more complex composite components or templates for like top navigations, site navigations, ideally even the full app, or more complex things like tables and forms, because everything else is basically already offered by Material UI. And I can, of course, offer theming, but there's not much use in me developing a new button component if it just does the same thing as the one from Material UI. So that's what I'm doing. And the goal, of course, is that other developers within the organization can just use it as like a building brick kind of tool when developing apps and have to not think about design, which I don't know, many of them maybe aren't really doing because they don't have the time or the capacity for that. But they could then use this library and still have their web app fit into our general branding and universe of apps. With the current app universe of NRC is very like diverse, also in terms of tech stack. And I think in an ideal world, all those apps would have the same tech stack. And I think maybe the design system could be a step towards that, like as kind of an incentive, maybe for new apps being developed, moving to a bigger common tech stack. But it's unrealistic that existing ones will be migrated. Yeah,
Right.
that's my current project.
And that's awesome, actually. That's really cool that you have a design system that you're working on. And is there something that you want to add to that, Roderick, just in terms of projects, what you're working on?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I get that. I think Irena's design system is very cool. I'm a big fan of design systems.
I'm wondering,
also,
is
yeah.
it possible to share the design system with us if it's not something? I mean, if the organization allows it, just for my curiosity.
Well, it has never been officially signed off. So this is the second iteration, really. There was a first one that was never really signed off on and that never really got very far. And the one that I'm currently working on is just on my local computer so far, and I haven't really shared it with anyone. So I can share my screen, but it's not finalized in any way.
Okay, I'm so sorry to interrupt you, Roderick. I was very curious.
Yeah, no, again, I think Irena's design system is great work. I think one of the challenges with working at large organizations is that we often have to work quite intensely with really poorly designed legacy systems. So I think things like Irena's design system are great for using when we're trying to develop our own applications. But I think also the reality for humanitarian organizations is that we're often stuck using big corporate enterprise software like Salesforce, Oracle, SAP, you name it. They're big, they're bad, they're ugly, they take a lot of time. And that's often, I think, a lot of the frustration from users is that they know that better can be done and better exists, but often where we're often stuck using those systems and there's no hope often in trying to improve them. So there's a little sliver of hope often to design better interfaces and systems when we have either the ability to develop them in-house or together with an external partner. For the project that I want to talk about that my team has worked on is an AI powered translation tool. So one of the things we work on or have access to is Microsoft's Power Apps solution. So that's a low code, no code kind of solution where you don't have to be, dare I say, a proper developer. I don't know if Irene is going to give me a dirty look if I say that. A proper developer to code or to build lightweight apps. And then within this Power Apps, we then use the existing, we use a existing large language model for different languages. So we chose French, Arabic, Spanish, and English. And then we trained those different models on additional internal documentation and A/B translations from one language to another. And that improved the scoring and the quality of the translation. So that was step one. Step two was then to design the interface. So first we kind of just created an app, created some boxes, created kind of a rough layout. Then we did a bit of just online research to see what are our competitors doing. So we went to Google Translate. We went to the other well-known translation websites whose name I have now forgotten. But again, we noticed that there were some definite patterns how these websites do their layouts, where they place their buttons, the language they use, the UX they use. So we again copied or closely were inspired by the way that they did their layout and interactions as well. And that led us to create a quite well received document translation system that is now able to translate PDFs, Word documents, I think Excel if it wants to, but it also does on demand instant translations. And the nice thing, because it was trained on NRC's internal lingo and acronyms and language as well, it often gives or it should give better feedback than if you were to use a public translation service. And also, of course, it keeps the data safe within our own tenant rather than sharing it with the wider translation services that exist. So maybe I'll pause on that one. I can also talk about another data platform that we're working on, but maybe I'll just pause there for a moment because I also don't know how much time we actually have.
Right. No, we got time for a couple more questions before we open it up for Q&A with the people present here. So if you want to expand on your data platform that you're working on, that'd be great too. And just a quick question before you do that, are these platforms that you're developing currently for internal use of NRC, or are they something that maybe can be used outside directly by those in affected crises?
Yeah, great question. At the moment, the translation tool is internal use. I would say mostly because it's still quite expensive to do the translations. There's only so many free credits that we have per month to use the Azure translation model or a large language model. So we do pay a few $100, I think, a month to do the translations internally. But it has worryingly, I mean, we're very happy, but the business owners decided that it's so good that they've now canceled the contracts with the translation agencies. Again, as from a technical point of view, our feedback was that seems a little bit soon. Please make sure that somebody always reviews what you translate. And everyone's like, yeah, of course we do that. But again, this is the power of AI. So that, of course, is always exciting and worrying. So no, but I think we are happy to share this with other humanitarian organizations. I think we have shared this, how we've done it within Power Apps and Azure. It's no secret. It's something, there's a large language model within Microsoft that you can tap into. We just built a front facing app for users to use. So it's really no kind of secret what we did. The other platform maybe that I want to talk about is something called NRC Exchange. So it's a data discoverability and management platform. It's built on an open source platform called CKAN. That's the letter CKAN, CKAN. And the idea about that was that there's a lot of different siloed and fragmented data sets within the organization. And we actually spent quite a lot of time internally asking different people about different data sets or the same data sets. We're never quite sure what the up-to-date data set is. So we decided to create a internal, again, at the moment, data platform to host specific data sets at the moment regarding to finances, HR, but also slowly a bit more with some of the projects that we're doing in the field where they're able to add information as well. Again, one of the important things for us in this aspect was to learn from what others are doing. So the platform is built on a similar platform as something called Humanitarian Data Exchange, or hdx.org. And that is probably the premier or the go-to place for the entire humanitarian sector to find and reuse data sets to help with decision making and analysis. And again, our approach was see what the leaders are doing, be influenced by their design choices, and that's kind of how we've built our platform and how we continue to develop it. So,
Right. A quick question on just, NRC is a very large organization, and you are working alongside many different teams. So there's like design language, tech language, humanitarian language. How do you and your teams bridge these different languages? How do you make sure that development, data, and humanitarian program teams actually talk to each other? Whoever would like to.
Irena, you go first. But yeah, it's a great question.
I just wanted to say, I think we're still figuring that out.
I think the reality is that every week, every few weeks, there's an email that comes in, and this is an emergency. We urgently need something. We urgently need support. We just need this little bit of work. We just need a week of your time or 2 weeks of your time. And then 6 months later, there's 3 staff dedicated to a project with no end in sight. We're bad as an organization, and I think the sector is bad at scoping and understanding and defining what the actual needs are. And I think that's problem number one. I think often our colleagues that want to create or have a digital solution to support their work. I think one of the things that often hinders our work is that they often also don't necessarily have concrete processes or workflows in place to do the work that they should do. It's unfortunately often a little bit ad hoc, which can be justifiable because every situation is different, and there's also very large staff turnover. But the reality is that often when we're asked to do something or develop something, the ask is unclear and is ever changing, which makes it difficult for us also to build something. We do have, I think, more and more, I would say, product managers. I think that's fair to say, Irena, that we have a few product managers and a few people that do business analysis now, that kind of act as this bridge between the digital side and the program side to ensure that the solutions that we build are the right ones, and also to ensure that the needs and the requirements are very clear from the beginning before we kick off a project. So yeah, maybe Irene, is any reflections on the work that you've done on participatory facing platforms or anything?
Maybe just the one project that I worked on was a global one. It was meant to be global, meaning that 40 plus countries have to agree on what makes the most sense for this app in terms of requirements, and it was nearly impossible. I'm not on that project anymore, so I'm not sure how they actually managed. But it was very tricky.
Maybe I can just add to that. I mean, that's also one of the challenges, and also probably one of the reasons why, all of the enterprise system software that we use is so ugly and hard to use, because it's trying to meet everyone's needs for every single purpose and every sort of single kind of environment. So the focus is on just getting as many fields or data points available there in a plain language, which doesn't necessarily also always necessitate good workflow for the user. So yeah, I think it's a good reflection.
Also, everything is always urgent.
Right. I think like this question really intrigued some other people. So we have 2 questions in the chat. Is this really the reality of your organization? Is it very siloed, or do you have flexible teams, sprints, etc.? And for Irene, as a developer, are you receiving emergency calls, or is your job very similar to a classic for-profit job position, or is your developing process and timeline different in the humanitarian sector?
Maybe already the first one, we do have flexible teams and sprints. we have some teams use sprints and agile methods. Some teams probably don't. Some teams consist of one person. I guess a lot of teams do. So define that as you will. But we're like the project teams themselves are somewhat free on deciding what methodology in terms of process they want to use. Mine uses sprints. I personally do not have a lot of emergency calls. Me personally, I don't. My work is pretty close to a classic for-profit position on a daily basis, but I have a lot of coworkers who do get a lot of emergency calls and are being dragged into a new project every week and are very much first responders people.
Yeah. Great.
Maybe I'll answer the first one as well. Maybe then yeah. Again, I think we do have elements of the organization that is very solid. We try to, at least from a digital or data perspective, work across different teams or departments. But yeah, there are natural silos as well, because just it is harder to get closer to the teams as well. It's just the way that it is in the field. So.
Thank you. In the interest of time, I will ask you one more question before I open the floor for Q&A for everyone. What are some lessons that maybe you've both learned or your teams have learned about bringing design thinking or your specific skills into the humanitarian organizations that others could learn from?
I like in terms of the design system, it's too early for any lessons, as it's been very much it's baby steps still. But maybe from the first iteration of the project, it failed because consultants left, project manager left, and the project just kind of fell off the wagon. And generally, design is, as Rod said, an afterthought and not prioritized generally. And so your mission of awareness about added value of design for NGOs, I'm intrigued by that. I would actually be interested in how you want to achieve that, because that would maybe be the closest thing to a lesson I have, that is actually very, very necessary.
And maybe to also add to what Irena is saying, I think we're doing better slowly but surely. I think we're also spending more time on a proper discovery before we start working on any project. We're doing more user engagement, user research at the beginning. We're doing more user acceptance testing. So I think the way that we're working as a section on digital is improving. But yeah, it is challenging, especially at this time in the humanitarian sector, which is going through quite a crisis, where we're losing good staff members as well, to continue to promote the importance of things like design and design processes, because yeah, everything's urgent and has to be done tomorrow, and often people feel like there's no time for that. So it's a struggle.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. I will now open the floor for any questions that people might have.
If no one else, how are you trying? Like, what is the approach to increasing awareness for the value of design in NGOs? Do you have an approach? How does it work? How can we learn from you, maybe?
I think Cedric would be the best person to answer this, unless like Beatrice, if you want to jump in, or Hosem, if you want to jump in. Because Cedric and Gwen are in a train right now. So I assume that they will not be available to answer.
I think one approach is like more about learning how not necessarily what you can learn from humanitarian designers, but it's more about us learning about what you're doing and be more aware about that and how we can sort of like try and move towards that. I think it's a sort of like as a learning curve. And as Cedric's just commented in the Slack channel, it's like creating that knowledge base which we can all sort of collaborate on towards getting to a sort of good collaboration.
Again, I'm happy to hear from anyone else. I think Irena had a good question, so if anybody else has any thoughts, then please share it. Because again, I mean, I don't come from a classic design background at all, but again, out of my own personal interest, I did a UX course because I think it was just super interesting. And again, for me, there are like a lot. The whole process of designing something is I think something that we can definitely learn from designers within the humanitarian sector. We definitely don't do enough. We don't do enough qualitative and quantitative research. We don't do that much observational studies. Usability testing is we're doing a bit more, but again, stakeholder interviews. I really think there's a lot that we can learn about the process, about how design is done, that could be applied to the humanitarian sector. So I think there's great potential. I think it's just about how we communicate that concretely and make it understandable to the humanitarian organizations, especially at this time when the funding is really going down drastically. So
Yeah, I just want to add from my experience, I've worked in International Rescue Committee briefly, and they have a whole research and innovation wing under International Rescue Committee dedicated to research. So they have multiple teams within it. For example, they have an evidence to action team, a behavioral insights team, and a human-centered design team, which work in tandem to bring insights to every project. They also do a lot of participatory work. For example, they have something where they launch projects to the public to garner their solutions to these problems. So they just open these as contests to the public, and the public brings or submits their solutions. They may also win some money for this. And then these solutions are worked on together by the evidence to action team, the design team, and the behavioral insights team, where they come together to actually make these solutions a reality. And so I'm not exactly sure how it became so strong in IRC to have this research and innovation wing. But I think advocating for design, advocating for user research in your organizations would be the first step to actually engaging more people in this work. And so, because I think both of you mentioned that maybe not a lot of teams are talking and collaborating cross teams, and so I'm just wondering, and I think that's something that humanitarian designers does really good as well, which is one of their focus is on education. How can we spread more awareness and close the gap between humanitarian fields and design fields? So I'm just wondering if advocating for it would be a good first step to starting in your organizations.
Generally, definitely. We just have to figure out to whom. But we do have an identity team in head office, but they are, as far as I know, mostly focused on the general web page and like emails and flyers and more print media, as far as I know. But yeah, maybe we could approach them. We will definitely have to approach them, but specifically also about the bigger thing. Yeah.
Yeah, again, I think educating people, the message has to be very clear what we're educating them on. There's a lot of internal trainings on a lot of stuff. People have a lot of meeting and training fatigue. So again, if we do trainings, we have to make sure that that is very relevant to their work and leads to better improvement in the service that they provide. So yes, it's needed, but we have to be very conscious and intentional about what kind of training that would be.
Absolutely. If there are any other questions that people would like to ask, if not, I do have a question, but I'll wait for anyone else if you have a question.
I've got something. I think, like, I always think of how one can try and fine tune the collaboration into, you know, sort of, obviously one approaches your area, and as you've said, there's not very much time for much else. And the sort of whole idea is to create a space and time for design to help what you're working on or what you're doing or the sort of organization. And I find that is like this is not necessarily a question, it's just a sort of like brainstorm really. But I think that is one of like the biggest obstacles really. It's sort of the challenge is to really help also in like the timing and actually be a real sort of not positive asset, but like helpful asset. Sorry, I've probably explained that really badly, but I hope you've got the gist of what I'm saying. Yeah, I think, yeah. But anyway, thank you for sharing your work and your projects. It's really, really interesting to sort of hear your background and stuff.
Actually, the helpful asset thing is kind of a interesting point, because I think a lot of those solo developers working on whichever app in somewhere in the field are probably considering design more of a chore than something that could actually help. So yeah, maybe it could be a talking point in the future.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I feel, that sometimes, you know, it's like an add-on which isn't necessarily seen as necessary. And it's like, how does one approach that? And I don't know, in a way that is sort of like helpful for everybody.
I think it's an interesting point. Again, we just kicked off another project where we told the person that we're building the solution for, it's like, oh yeah, we just started discovery phase now. That'll take between 1 or 2 weeks, and that's all we communicated. It's all. I think we can also do better to excite them and engage them and kind of prepare them for what a discovery phase for a project means, what it looks like, why we're doing it. So I think also, like you said, I think it would be good if we're prepared to have a good set of tools or toolkit ready to use at different times, but also then I guess what Medha mentioned earlier as well, then to also kind of do a bit of literacy and training around design processes, and that we're doing it for this reason, to ensure that the product that we end up building is to the requirements of the end user. So yeah, I think that's a good reflection.
Well, I have a question on data, if you don't mind, Roderick, just like personally very curious about it. So do you also happen to collect data, I mean, obviously from directly of the people who are affected?
Great question. I can give that back to Irena, since that's the project you worked on.
I have a follow-up question after. Yeah.
Sorry, I kind of zoned out when you said data. So what was the question exactly?
I'll rephrase. I meant to ask, do you also collect data of the affected people, or currently do you only have like internal data that is just NRC data that you're working on, or are you also collecting the affected people's data?
Oh yeah, no, we definitely do. We had a huge, or still have a huge project that is doing exactly that. That is meant to collect all kinds of. Yes, short answer, yes.
So, I mean, my follow-up question to that is, how do you ensure that these reflect humanitarian values when you're collecting such data, when you're working with such data, and when you're also maybe propagating such data, which might include like dignity, inclusion, or do no harm? How do you handle like the ethics around data collection and data propagation?
I can only speak for part of this, and just like as developers, we of course try to secure the data in the best way and to prevent data leaks of any sort. In terms of what the data looks like the development of a data model, that's not me. That's been done by other people who have a lot of humanitarian context, and so they will have to answer this question. Maybe Rod knows more.
Yeah, again, I mean, data responsibility protection is one of the most important things, especially when we work with sensitive data of the participants and the people that we serve. Yeah, and I think it's one of the things that's also, I won't say delayed the project, but it was made one of the projects that Irena used to work on, and that's still going on within the organization. Is it makes it one of the hardest products and problems to solve is different access to data for different people across different countries and different responsibilities. Next to that, we're also seeing a I would say, I guess, a positive trend in concepts like data sovereignty, that the data that you collect in a certain of a population in a certain country, that data has to stay within the country, both in terms of that it's on a server somewhere, but also that people can only access it within that country. So these are also, I guess, developments happening within I wouldn't say just within the humanitarian sector, but in general, which also adds another layer of complexity to the work that we're trying to do when we're trying to use that data to make the best decisions to support a local population. So I don't know if that answers your question directly, but again, more of a reflection of my own thoughts.
No, yeah, that absolutely helps, because I'm always concerned when we're working with vulnerable populations how things get captured and how they're used. So, which is where my question kind of came from. And if anyone else has any other questions, or maybe we can move towards the closure of this call, because we're almost at time. Okay, so I'm sorry about like not being on camera. It's just my internet not being amazing. But I do want to take a quick minute to thank both Irena and Roderick. Apologies for any mispronunciations of your names today. And thank you so much for being our first ever speakers in our community calls. We're so honored to have you here in Humanitarian Designers community session. And people like you who are doing such important work also inspire us to keep going on, and also help us understand how we can make our way into the kind of places that you're in. And if you both have any reflection for today that you might be compelled to share. Don't want to put you on the spot, but if you have any reflection, yeah.
I guess first of all, we are also honored to have been the first speakers ever. I hope it was useful. And yeah, maybe just it would be good to maybe stay in touch and to like, as I've told you, I'm the only one working on the design system, so I could use some designer input. So just staying in touch could be beneficial for all of us.
Absolutely,
Yeah,
you're in
Need
the
to
right.
work together more.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm done.
Yeah, and I was going to add to, I guess, what Irene was saying. Happy to be the first, hopefully not the last. But I'm sure we'll have much more engaging and interesting people to follow as well. So good work on organizing the first one. And thank you all for joining on our behalf as well.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And thank you to all our listeners today. Thank you so much for joining in. And we'll see you again. Hope to stay in touch and stay connected and have lovely evenings and days wherever you are in the world. Thank you so much.
You too.
Ciao,
Bye-bye.
ciao.
Bye-bye.
Bye.